Hi, welcome to DNB Carnegie and the earnings presentation with Terranor. My name is Marcus Almrud. I'm an analyst here at the bank. I got with me Berglin and Inka Konturri, who is CEO and CFO at Terranor. I will leave the word to you. You will present the quarter, and then I'll come back with Q&A. So over to you.
Thank you, Marcus.
Thank you.
And thank you all for visiting this webcast for our quarter 3 interim report. Let's see if I can get this. Yes, here's me and Inka, like Marcus said, Group CEO and Group CFO of the company. Starting by summing up the quarter. Well, in a nutshell, I would say that this is a very strong quarter. We prove our ability to grow. We prove that the core business has the ability to improve profitability. We will shed some more light on the profitability situation. But overall, the core business of Terranor, the road operations and maintenance, is progressing in the right way. We are trending towards the long-term targets. And of course, we've always talked about Sweden being the growth engine, but Sweden is also important to note the profitability engine. Looking at quarter to quarter could sometimes be misleading. Looking at quarter 3 in 24, we had a one-off effect, profit in one of the subsidiaries that affected in a double-digit million level. So, of course, we tend to look at it over a one-year cycle. And in that perspective, Terranor is definitely trending in the right way. Coming back to the market that we operate in, as you know, we have operations in Denmark, Sweden, and Finland. Sweden, that stands for close to 60% of the operations, of course, has a very strong outlook. In all 3 countries, we expect the full market to hold some 80 billions. Considering the higher traffic volumes and also the higher security demands, not to mention NATO and defense, of course, we are moving into a market that will be growing over time. Good thing working with state and municipalities is the visibility, the transparency of what funding will come into the sector. And looking at both Denmark and Sweden, the visibility is very high and indicating that numbers will increase. In Sweden, the numbers are at the 50%, close to at least increase annually, predominantly to handle the maintenance deficit that we have built up in Sweden. And of course, we see that in the numbers for the Swedish road operations and maintenance business. Like I said, looking solely at the Swedish road operations and maintenance business, making up of close to 60%, it has never been in better shape. I really need to underline that both growth-wise and profitability-wise, we are all-time high in the Swedish road operations and maintenance. Quarter to quarter, we are affected by a one-time effect in 24, but we are also affected negatively in this quarter by subsidiaries that we have taken a restructuring stance towards. We have taken action. Part of it is in the adjusted numbers. Inka will tell you more about the adjustments. I'm not a big fan of adjustments, but I will tell you very straight up, over 90% of the adjustments is the IPO. Aside from that, we will not work with adjustments. What you see is what you get. Inka, seasonality, on the back of me talking about it's hard to see one quarter compared to one quarter over an annual cycle. Please inform us.
Yes. Our operations follow the seasonal cycle. Our maintenance year starts with the winter season in 4th quarter. During the winter season, we have more fixed revenues with the limited margin expansions. Going into the summer season, 2nd and the 3rd quarter, we have more variable works and then also more on extra works, which increases the profitability. Going into the fourth quarter again, closing up to the maintenance year, we usually have the highest of the volumes. So the seasonality is really important to keep in mind when evaluating our quarterly performance. Terranor Group is growing. You say something? No? Okay. Terranor Group is growing. Our revenue amounted to 794 million SEK, with a 10% of the growth quarter to quarter. Revenue for year to date was 2.4 billion SEK, and this is the growth of 8% compared to prior year. This keeps us firmly on a track to meet us our medium-term targets at least of 8% of the growth. Biggest growth driver is the segment Sweden, which has been growing 17% quarter to quarter and 10% year to year. Growth comes from the base business, road operations and maintenance, where we have now started 5 new contracts successfully. And our growth journey will get support from Denmark, where we have signed the new municipality contract starting in April 2026. Here we can see adjusted EBITDA numbers. Adjusted EBITDA for the quarter was 21 million. This is a 3% of EBITDA, adjusted EBITDA margin. This is a drop of 1 percentage point from third quarter in 2024. But looking into the quarters, this year the growth, the EBITDA has been more stable, and this is increasing. We have increased our EBITDA by 14% compared to last year. This result reflects seasonal effects, ongoing restructuring in certain subsidiaries, but also successful ramp-up of the new contracts. Excluding the subsidiaries, Sweden demonstrates the strong profitability and performance, well in line and above the plan. Mikael, would you like to give some color to this?
I can. Thank you, Inka. Talking about the subsidiaries, let's start there. You know that in Sweden we have subsidiaries called Signa, Infra and Norvia. We have told you guys before that we are embedding those subsidiaries now into the business. Partly it is due to efficiency, but it makes much more sense because road operations and maintenance is what we are focusing. If we were to look solely at Norvia, which is the trucking company, and Infra, we have had losses this year. And of course, this is part of why we are taking actions, and we are taking firm actions. Coming into 26, those businesses will be in a totally different shape. But it has to be said that looking at the road operations, they are trending very close to the long target margin of 5%. And also, Sweden, the road operations and maintenance is, I would say, the driver. Close to 90% of revenue growth is from Sweden. And what makes Sweden especially strong looking forward is the new contracts that we started, not only 24, but the contracts we started now this year, September 25. All of them been mobilized, been ramped up, been executed on or above target. And that gives confidence that Sweden is trending in the right way. Inka is talking about the profitability trend, and I will strongly support that. We have had effects from the subsidiaries. We've handled it. But looking beneath it, looking at what really will be the driver for years to come, well, that part of the business is certainly going in the right direction.
Back one.
Sorry.
And then the items affecting comparability. 27.2 million. This mainly related to IPO process. This includes the IPO cost of 18 million SEK and the bonus cost for the IPO process also 7 million. We have quite lean top organization, and we needed to bring in extra support, enable to complete the IPO process in compressed time frame. We are not expecting the IPO-related cost in fourth quarter.
No.
No. For the quarter, the cash is negative. We still have IPO-related one-offs, but we are not expecting those to come in anymore in the fourth quarter. Compared to year-to-date figures 2024, we have increased our operating cash flow plus 17 million, and without IPO one-offs, this would be even more. Like we discussed earlier, Sweden remains the core growth engine with the 5 new contracts and solid profitability. Finland is on a restructuring phase. Focus has been on decreasing the fixed cost and increasing the profitability in the state contracts. And in Finland, there was a risk reservation done in third quarter. The effect was 2 million euro SEK. Denmark is focusing on closing of the 5 state contracts. We can see a small effect on decreasing on extra work volume in state contracts in Denmark. But going into the 2026 with 4 new state contracts and starting the Tønder municipality contract in second quarter, we are expecting the Denmark to contribute positively to our midterm margin targets.
Thank you, Inka. Well, looking at the long-term targets, want to perhaps start where you left off, Inka. Looking at Denmark, we've talked about the effect of leaving all of the state contracts this year end. And I think it needs to be underlined that, of course, when we leave almost 60% of the revenues, that is the state contracts, we've run those contracts for 4 years now on what we have said to be challenging margins. Leaving them, starting them up, basically doing the same work, but on very different terms. Of course, Denmark is going into much better territory. And also looking at the Tønder municipality contract that we won, it is the effect of also us focusing more on the municipalities. So I would say I have really strong hope. I am confident that Denmark will be producing also close to the 5% in the short future. So Sweden and Denmark really looking strong. Finland we talked about. It will take longer time. Finland has a lot of contracts back from 22 and 23. In Finland, contracts are always 5 years, meaning they expire in 27 and 28. We will work with Finland. But looking at Sweden and Denmark, Terranor Group is definitely in good shape. I would say better than ever. So I have strong hopes that we will reach the targets. The growth target, we're above it. Profitability, trending in the right direction. Dividends, that is the plan. We will pay back to our owners. And leverage-wise, we are in good shape. So to sum it up, Marcus, I think that looking at the targets, we are on the right path. Yeah, this is what we always come back to, the reasons to invest in Terranor. And I want to start with what we always talk a lot about in the company. Why are we here? What do we do? Well, first of all, we produce service that is good for society. Without us doing what we do, society will stop. And the market that we are in is growing for a good reason. We will not see less traffic on the roads. We will not see less demands on secure roads. Quite the opposite. We see a high degree of increase in funding coming into our sector. And for a company like us, obviously now trending in the right path, I see good future. I see very strong outlooks. And like I said, we come from high growth rates. We continue to grow, maybe not as fast, but looking at the tender season that is coming in Sweden now, we feel, for good reasons, confident that we will continue growing. By that, Marcus, the presentation is over.
Yeah,
So open up for questions.
Yeah, a couple of questions. Maybe I'll start out with a few. Maybe we just start with we talked about sales and the driver of sales, but there were new contracts starting in Sweden in September. Maybe talking a little bit about how the ramp up of those are going, because also, of course, with new contracts starting up, with what you talk about high profitability, and we come back to profitability. So let's start with sales. You have also the old contracts coming out.
Yeah.
Is this the main reason for the 10% growth driver?
Yes. And that is also a good question, to the point. It's also the driving force of increased profitability, because, like you said, we are phasing out contracts that were taking 21, 22 when the company was more, how should I put it, eager to gain market percentage. So, of course, and also the operations were in a different shape than it is now. Coming back to your question about the contracts that we ramped up in 25 and also in 24, there is a big difference between how we ramped up mobilized contracts back in 21, 22, and now looking at 24 and 25. And the evidence is that I think everybody can understand that since this is a price competition, you go low, you get the contracts. The evidence is if you can ramp up on your tender and the tender margin. And for the contracts in 24, that we started 4 new ones, in 25 we started 5 new ones in Sweden, they've all met the target and or above. And since what we do for 4 years is, I'm not trying to make it easy because this is hard, but what you do the first year, you will continue doing year 2, year 3, and 4. And you will probably, most likely, increase your efficiency in doing it. So coming out the first year is very, very important. Yeah.
And maybe we can come back to sales and orders, but maybe we dive straight into profitability and the margin, because the margin was down 140 basis points. And in my book, that was mostly because of Denmark. But maybe one question on Sweden before we come into Denmark. How big of an impact you mentioned Infra in Norway? I mean, you had restructuring, but take that away. That was one of the reasons. How much is that impacting?
Year to date, I would say that Norway, not as much as the loss last year. So we have done progress, but of course we're not happy losing money. So year to date, I would say, Inka would help me, but I would say 10 million, close.
Yeah.
So and in the quarter, less of course, but still negative. Looking at Infra, well, maybe finishing off Norway, to me it has been much more of an operational issue. The operation has been sized wrong, and now we are downsizing, especially the business in the Stockholm area. And to us, that will do all of the change from negative to plus. Looking at Infra, it has been a top-line situation. Company was very successful in 2024, doing a lot of contracts, obviously profitable. Coming into 25, it has been a problem gaining new orders. And partly criticizing myself, we are a road operations and maintenance business company. That is what we are good at. Finding light infrastructure projects outside that scope, we have not been good at that. So now we are embedding it into the base industry. That, to us, will solve the problem. But yes, it has had effect in the quarter. So again, coming over to the road operations and maintenance. Like Inka said, Sweden's segment is 4%. Take away Infra and Norway, close to 5%, only in the road operations and maintenance. And looking forward, when we do not have the effect of Norway and Infra, but we do have the effect of additional funding coming in, and we are already now trending towards 5% in the base industry, well, that gives me confidence that we will, in total, be able to reach the long-term target.
And would you say that you're taking care of the problems in Norvia and Infra.
Yep.
When will you be done? So will we see the impact of the effects? Yeah, when?
In Q4, we will see, but definitely starting 26, we will be out of the losses. We will have a profitable Norvia, and Infra will be part of the road operations and maintenance. And I will also give you an idea of why Infra is natural in the road operations and maintenance. Because of the additional funding, all the demands that our biggest client, Trafikverket in Sweden, our strategy is to be the one-stop shop provider for what they need in road operations and maintenance, not doing tunnels, bridges, but in our industry. And within that comes light infrastructure. So we will do that as well, but we will not do it aside from the base industry. That is the big difference.
Okay. Moving to Denmark, maybe.
Yep.
So we didn't see the normal seasonal pattern in Denmark. So we saw a pickup in profitability last year in Q3 and Q4, and now we saw a drop in Q3. What was behind that?
I would say the ending of the contracts. We anticipated higher volumes, looking at historical data that supported that always Q3 and Q4 amounts for the highest revenues. This year, I would say, is somewhat affected that we are leaving 5 out of 5 contracts. Don't get me wrong, it's not that like we're shutting down business, because next day, 31st December, we leave the one contract. Next day, we start up the other one. But our clients' behavior in ordering extra work, swellings, it has been lower in Denmark this quarter than it was last quarter. And for us, it has to do with us closing down all of the contracts, then starting it up. If, Marcus, it only means a periodicity question, that volumes are shifted from Q3, Q4 into the new contracts, then I'm all fine. And like I said, I am very confident that Denmark is moving into better territory.
And we'll come back, because you pick up on, I think, an important point. But if we look a little bit just very, very short term, should we expect the same kind of impact in Q4? Because I guess that Q3 and Q4 and the extra orders kind of go together.
They do. Q4, my guiding, so I need to choose my words, but historically, and we actually do not see that big of a trend difference. Q4 will be our strongest quarter, revenue-wise, but also profitable-wise. Looking at Denmark, since to your question, Q3 this year towards last year, we cannot totally rule out that quarter to quarter, the fourth quarter will be better this year than last year. But looking at Sweden, again, yes, we will be stronger. The growth engine is Sweden. So out of a group perspective, we will trend stronger in Q4 than in Q3, and we will end the year at all-time high revenues. I'm writing checks here now, I understand that, but yes, I feel that confident about it. Yeah.
But again, looking at if it is extra work and swellings, which is behind the kind of drop, which is your interpretation here, then, as you say, I mean, it's not, you don't do extra work and swellings because it's fun, it's because they're needed. So even though they're not ordered now, they're still there to be ordered, is the way that you see.
Very true point, Marcus, of course. And I've talked about visibility and transparency going forward and working with state entities. We tend to talk a lot about Sweden because it's obvious, the deficit. The same goes for Denmark. We have visibility. We know there will be additional funding for bicycle paths, for road safety, for rest areas, all of the things that we are working in, all of the areas that we currently hold 4 out of 5 state contracts in. So, of course, the additional funding will increase revenues also in Denmark. And on top of that, municipalities that we have proven that we are strong in the competition.
Yeah. Well, I got a couple of questions. Take a couple of questions from the call. You've been quite vocal, or not just reading out now, you've been quite vocal about the new contracts being entered in much higher profitability levels. During this quarter, even if adjusted for one-offs, the EBITDA margin seems quite far from the 5% target. When do you expect profitability to improve at an aggregated level?
You will see it in the fourth quarter.
In the fourth quarter?
Yeah, you will see it in the fourth quarter. The long-term target of 5%, well, I cannot be clearer that Sweden close. Denmark with the new terms next year will be close. So if it happens in 26, that check I will not write, but we are very close. We've had struggles with subsidiaries. We've handled them. We've had struggles with historical contracts phasing out. And we have the evidence of our mobilization, the ramp up, and the tender knowledge. So we see that 5% definitely. I will stop there. I will not give a date for when 5%. No.
And another question, which is a bit more shorter term, but you're closing down the contracts in Denmark. How does it usually work at these kind of times? Is it projects running and that there's a risk of like write-downs of projects or anything like that we should look out for?
Of course, to some extent, you will have that risk. But then again, you've been running the contracts for so long. You know these contracts. The level of uncertainties, unforeseens that you might see in other industries, suddenly something happens. That is not our industry. So we will not see a big drop in any kind. That is not what I'm seeing.
And maybe staying a little bit with Denmark before we move over to Sweden, and also a little bit on Finland. You got a municipal order on Denmark during the quarter. So we had the 4 state contracts, which you won last quarter, which is starting in January 1st. You've been talking a little bit about municipal orders you're targeting those. Talk a little bit about your strategy in Denmark and regarding this and what the focus is.
Yeah, sure. The strategy is similar in Sweden and Finland. We target primarily the state contracts. The state contracts are the base. That's where you have the volume. After that, municipalities that are adjacent or within the state contracts, simply because it adds efficiency, utilization, it adds robustness and resilience, because we are not only dependent on one state contract. I think looking at the Swedish industry, we have very good examples from Gothenburg or the West area. We see it also in the Norrköping area, where we've been very fortunate with the municipality contracts. The same goes for Denmark. Where we have the state basis, we are now targeting the municipalities, and we are strong in that industry. So I'm looking forward and seeing a mix of state and municipality being the backbone of the business. That is the strategy.
Maybe look a little bit about Sweden. So you have the new contract starting now, and then you'll have the full impact in Q4. But you're also going into new tendering season. Maybe talk a little bit about the tendering season, what you expect, what is upcoming, how you're preparing.
Yeah, very highly exciting. This is starting now, actually, or in October. We get the documents that we are tendering on. We start earlier. We start in April, May, looking at, because we know what contracts are coming out. We actually know what contracts are coming out 26, 27, 28. So long time to prepare. We have a lot of data looking at historically, what was the tenders last time? Do we have equivalent contracts that we can benchmark towards? All of that is done prior. Then the documents come out in October, and we really dig down. So we have the central department, we have the local department, combining forces. First tenders go in early January. Then I think it's 22 or 23 contracts that are coming out this year. kind of depending if sometimes Trafikverket splits one big contract into two. But somewhere 22, 23, I think on an annual basis, these contracts last time were tendered up to close to 1 billion Swedish annually, times 4. And that was 4 years ago. So a lot of volume coming out. Of course, we will continue to tender on everything. That is what we do. We want to grow, but not giving away trade secrets. But like I said, we like to build strongholds, and we like to see a bigger picture of where is interesting municipality areas, where can we find adjacent businesses. So all of that goes into our tender process.
And how does it work practically when they come out? Is it like they come out one by one, or will it be chunks, or will we get to know at the end of March how this was the outcome, or how will it work?
Yeah, that's also exciting because they come out in buckets. So you handle in 4, 5, 6 perhaps in January. 2 weeks later, another 4, 5, 6, and it continues until end of February. And you will also know the answer sometimes before you handle in the next bucket. So you tender and you know the answer, then you tender the next ones. So of course, a lot of strategy also goes into, do you change your tender pattern? Do you change within this time frame? So of course I say this is very exciting, but also we are in the most intense time. We're moving into the winter time. So it needs to be said, most of our focus is on the roads, providing security and safe roads. Aside from that, tender season, definitely.
And maybe a question from the audience on the contract that you have or that you're starting. How sensitive are you to fixed prices here? So that is, what kind of risk are you having from prices being fixed and then you have inflation on that?
I was going to... No, okay. So we have index protection. So that is one layer. But of course, if we tender completely wrong on, let's say, subcontractor prices or our own prices, well, like in any tender process, that is your risk. But again, coming back to how we have been able to mobilize in 24 and 25, meeting all our subcontractor prices, to me and to our entire organization, it gives a lot of confidence that we have the ability to calculate and tender on the right levels. So, yeah.
Another question on Norvia and Infra. Are there any extra cost or project costs or anything like that, or is it? Do you have the restructuring cost? But if you don't talk about that, is it do you have any like project write-downs or anything like that, or is it just
no?
It's just pure profits.
Yeah, it is. Like I said, in Infra's case, it has been a disalignment between overhead cost or capex and top line. So we haven't been able to get enough revenue to cover the cost. So now we are downsizing, putting it into the road operations and maintenance, and making it supporting the base industry. Looking at Norvia, utilization. Definitely. The operations around Stockholm area has been too big. We haven't been able to utilize the trucks or the drivers. So now we are downsizing it. And the adjustment posts that we have in this quarter is due to the downsizing. It has a one-time effect. It will not continue. Unfortunately, we had to lay off people. We are selling trucks. It is part of the strategy of downsizing to come back to a shape where we are profitable and grow from there. Simple. It's not simple, but in its logic, perhaps.
And then it's a question of pricing of the new contracts in Denmark. So how much of the price is increased in these contracts? And is the volume similar to previous years, or will there be higher volumes as well as prices, do you expect?
Both. I would say, starting with the revenues, of course, we already know contract by contract that looking 4 years ago and now prices are up. So revenues in those 4 contracts will be very, very close to what we had in 5 contracts. That gives you one idea. Secondly, quality standards from our client is increasing. So our biggest client, Vejdirektoratet in Denmark, they have increased quality demands. And they actually can. On a level 1 to 3, they can choose and they have to tell us before every year. And we know that they are choosing the highest standard. Mm-hmm. That also, together with the increased funding that we already know, yes, I see increased revenues driven by that in Denmark. Prices, of course, you have price inflation in Denmark. But to me, the most interesting is the relation. What are we getting paid? What do we have to pay the subcontractors? And of course, the delta. To me, we are increasing that delta, meaning better profitability in Denmark as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's a question also on Finland, where you mentioned the war in Ukraine, which has not been mentioned before. But is the same thing with the contract that you do have, which you said you signed in 21-22, that is before the war, is kind of part of this. What is it that you bring this up now? That you mention it now? Has there been a further deterioration of the profitability in the contracts in Finland?
No, I would say why we bring it up is it has been there. We've talked about it before. We have contracts that are challenging. We have talked about we have contracts that are affected by the sanctions. We have mitigating actions that has been in place. And of course, we're struggling with them. And we are bringing it up because one needs to understand that out of 13 state contracts in Finland, 9 comes from 22 and 23, meaning a majority. So the effect that the sanctions had on these prices, or the cost that we carry, well, it had increase. And we are in discussions with the client. We think that it's a good discussion. We have the mitigating actions. But I am stepping in and will now be the acting country manager of Finland. And that is part of, I need to be there and support the local management. Because we have a situation that will continue until 27 and 28. So we have time to work with this situation. But Finland, looking at Sweden and Denmark, Finland has more challenges with the historical projects or contracts simply because they carry a higher weight in the or in the backlog, 9 out of 13. Compared to Sweden, compared to Denmark, Denmark is changing 5 historical contracts all into new ones. So that is a complete game changer for Denmark. Looking at Sweden, we know that the historical challenging contracts, we're phasing them out now. And we have been replacing them. So Denmark and Sweden, completely different. And I think it's fair to be transparent and to guide that we have a different situation in Finland than we have in Denmark and Sweden. Then again, Finland making up for 15% of the revenues, not meaning that, again, I am stepping in now because, I need to be there and support. Finland, Denmark and Sweden trending in a better way.
Is it the same? Do you have the same strategy in Finland as you have in Sweden and Denmark? That is, for the contracts that come out in 27 and 28, you will tender for them all?
No, that is historically, yes. Mm-hmm. But for Finland, that is part of the analyze that we need to do for Finland. Mm-hmm. Contracts are a bit different in Finland. Competition, a bit different. And of course, if one size doesn't fit all, then we adapt. That is what we always do. So part of my interest in Finland now is also taking the course for how do we turn Finland into 5% profitability. And a bit too soon, but we will come back with more answers on Finland, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Cash flow. You have the IPO cost and restructuring cost, and that is taking cash flow down in the quarter. If you adjust for those, that's the first part of the question. If you adjust for those, is it as it should be, or is it anything else in the cash flow that is happening between the numbers or below the numbers?
So, the operating cash for the quarter was on the negative side, but we had 27 million of the IPO cost included in that. Without that one, we would be higher than the last year. And compared to quarter, we were 17 million higher. Mm-hmm. And going into the future, into the fourth quarter, the best is still yet to come. So we are, the fourth quarter historically has been the best quarter when it comes to the cash. And we see that one coming also in this year.
And as you said, the IPO cost and also the restructuring cost for Norvia and Infra are behind you as well. And we should not expect, as you can see now, any more of this coming. That's planned anyway.
No, true.
And then finally, maybe, we're entering 2026. It's a very exciting times with the tenders that you go into in Sweden in particular. What is going to be the focus for you guys when we enter the new year, and then going also beyond the kind of March when the tendering season is over? What is your focus?
Sticking to the strategy. We are trending in the right way. We are confident that being specialized and being in all these markets, looking at the extra funding that is coming in, we are very confident that we are on the right strategy path here. So continue doing what we are doing, continue supporting the operations. This is everyday hard work. And it's work that is, of course, good for society, but nevertheless, it doesn't do itself. Security, efficiency in what we're doing, supporting the colleagues out on the road, but sticking to the game plan, sticking to the strategy. So far, it has proven, looking at Sweden, again, 60% of the revenues with the best projection going forward, we are on the right track. So stick to the plan, do more of what we already are doing, but continue focusing on the road and what's happening there.
Mm-hmm. Mikael, Inka, thank you very much for coming here to talk to us, and thank you everyone for watching.